Welcome, everyone. My name is Namal De Silva, and I'm the Chief Diversity Officer at the American Bird Conservancy. I'm so pleased that you're joining us for the third episode of our Birdability Birders series, which is co-hosted by ABC and by Birdability to support birders with disabilities and other health concerns. We at ABC are very happy to be able to support Birdability as they expand their work. Here's a bit more about our two organizations. American Bird Conservancy works with partners throughout the Americas to halt extinctions, safeguard habitats, and build capacity for bird conservation. We want more people to enjoy and care for birds and the environment, including people who have been historically ignored within the conservation field. Birdability is a new organization that uses education, outreach, and advocacy to make the birding community and the outdoors more welcoming, inclusive, safe, and accessible for everybody. Birdability focuses on people with mobility challenges, blindness or low vision, chronic illness, intellectual or developmental disabilities, mental illness, those who are neurodivergent, deaf, hard of hearing, or have other health concerns. In addition to current birders, Birdability strives to introduce birding to people with disabilities who are not yet birders so that they too can experience the joys of birding. Now, let me introduce you to our speakers and our team. Our guest today is Letícia Soares. Letícia is an ornithologist and postdoctoral associate at the Advanced Faculty for Avian Research at Western University. She was co-chair of the joint meeting of the American Ornithological Society and Society of Canadian Ornithologists in 2021. Throughout her career, she's done field research with birds from the Amazon forest in Brazil, where she's originally from, the Caribbean, and the mixed forests in Ontario. She has battled fibromyalgia for 8 years and is currently learning to live with long COVID, which causes chronic pain, fatigue, brain fog, among other symptoms. She considers herself a non-traditional birder and is passionate about making birding and ornithology more inclusive and accessible. Our co-host, Freya McGregor, is the Birdability Coordinator and serves as the interviewer for all 6 webinars. Freya is an occupational therapist, and her experience is with modifying the physical and cultural environments of people, adapting tasks and equipment to enable participation, and developing public health programs to help, and all of this helps guide Birdability's overall approach. Her background is in blindness and low vision services. I hope you enjoy this conversation.
For me, let's get into it. Letícia, so glad you're here. I'm looking forward to talking to you tonight. Please introduce yourself with your name, your pronouns if you like, where you are, and a little bit about your access challenge or challenges.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and thanks for coming here tonight. I'm super excited to share some of my experience with you. It's definitely a complex topic, and I'm very nervous, actually. So here we go. Yeah, let's do this. So my pronouns are she, her. I am currently speaking from the land of the Pataxó indigenous people in Northeast Brazil. It's the region now known as the state of Bahia. I'm in a region of Atlantic forest, exactly where the Portuguese have invaded Brazil and began colonization. So it's a very important place historically, ecologically, culturally for us. And I would like to use this moment to thank my hosts on this land and my tutors. So thank you very much. So a little bit about my access challenges. I have a little bit of a before and after COVID-19, right? So before COVID-19, I had been living with diagnosed fibromyalgia, and I say diagnosed because I can identify episodes before the diagnosis, but I didn't really, knew what it was, couldn't figure it out, flares and things like that. Until I was in graduate school in 2013, and I had a major flare that completely affected my mobility and put me mostly bedridden for about 7 months. And it was when I was diagnosed, and was when I also realized that I had brain fog for a long time, and was put on right treatment for fibromyalgia, and realized, wow, I can think. That's amazing. Um, so there was a lot of management changes in lifestyle that I did to manage my fibro after I got the diagnosis, and that empowered me, to search more for answers. And I had worked intentionally on that for a long time, with a lot of contact with nature and birds being uh, uh, mostly at the forefront of this treatment that, I came up for myself, that worked out over the years, right? And then came in COVID-19, and I thought that even though I struggled with health concerns, I had a sense, that a blissed sense that you are in control of this package here. But COVID-19 came and told me, no, you're not. You're absolutely not. So I got sick on April 12th of 2020, and I never recovered. And I passed the acute phase of COVID-19, and my illness turned into something else and morphed into the months, throughout the months, into a multi-system beast. So I'm basically an umbrella of just like chronic illnesses in a trench coat. That's how I describe myself right now. And it's extremely challenging to manage. It has flared my fibromyalgia. So I deal with a lot of pain. I deal with a lot of joint problems. Like I have this constant feeling of my joints being like cemented. So I have to pay attention to, slope of terrain now. Is that like a stable surface for me to step on, because my stability is not the same. So I'm more accident prone because of that. But the hallmark of things, of symptoms that I have is a symptom that's called post-exertional malaise, that really makes everything extremely complicated to handle. So that's the worsening of symptoms, and it means like pain, fatigue, brain fog. If you spend more energy than your energy tolerance threshold, let's put it like that. So you have to really change your life and your lifestyle around managing the energy budget that your body can handle. And that really affects things that I did before to take care of my mental health, and to manage my fiber as well, my profession, my personal life, So it's a complete life overhaul, I think, that this disease
Sure.
forces you to.
Sure. So before we go back to that, let's circle back a little bit to how you found birds and birding, and what is it about birds and birding that you like, that makes you, that keeps you enjoying this hobby and this profession as an ornithologist?
Yeah, I think birds, I call them tiny battery packages of wonder, because I think I will never cease to be amazed by them, and even by the simplest, not the simplest, the most common species that we see on our everyday lives, because there is always something that they offer in terms of just how they handle things. I'm really fascinated by resilience, but by what they're capable of doing. I find that absolutely amazing that, I'm here seeing ready turnstones, and in a few months they're gonna go up to Canada to lay eggs, and it's mind blowing, that little thing can do this back and forth every year. It's pretty amazing.
Oh
They're
yeah, it's
very
totally
cool.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Actually, there's
But
not many. Sorry.
but what got me started, right? Uh, I always, when I was in college, I was always into ecology and being outside and outdoors, nature always being something that has helped me and has helped my mental health. Um, but I never thought the birds were for me because, I had so many other things to be concerned about that I would see people going on bird outings in college, and I don't have time for that. I have to manage work, I have to manage classes and other responsibilities. And then I got into grad school and had a chance to go to the field with a few ornithologists, and I'm like, wow, birds are so cool. And then I got just absolutely hooked into them, and then that's what I want to do. And yeah, here I am. Yes.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was going to say there's not many birds shared between North or South America and Australia, but there are ruddy turnstones here in Australia every now and then. So these little birds fly a really long way.
I know.
And so there are lots of different ways to enjoy wild birds, and many people often think of birding involving walking down a trail. That's not the only way to do it, though. How do you go birding? How do you enjoy wild birds?
That's a great question. So my disability is what is called a dynamic disability, because long COVID is a chronic illness that is a spectrum chronic illness, right? And it's a relapsing, remitting chronic illness as well. So you have people that have, deal with a different number of symptoms and intensity of symptoms, as well as the symptom cycle, sometimes within the day, sometimes like throughout the week. So because you can be well in one day and completely bedridden and uncomfortable on the next, you got to be creative, right? To keep doing the things that you love. And so when I I realized, that I was not going to fully recover from COVID-19. It, I grieved a lot the loss of the habits, like all of the things that I used to do that would help me physically, help me mentally, and birding was one of them. And there was a lot of loss of independence because my partner, who's also my caretaker, is also a long hauler. So we have to manage, our family dynamics so we can accommodate each one of our habits, and take care of our health. Um, so when I was spending a lot of time in bed, I really, really missed this contact with the outside. So the first thing I did, I repositioned my bed in the bedroom so I could face the window. And luckily, I had this really big and beautiful oak tree outside of my window. And that just became my world, and I knew just every single detail about that tree. And I watched so many birds visit that tree, and it was just, just details, it's like almost like fractals, just expanding in details. And sometimes because of these differences in intensity of symptoms, I had bad flares of long COVID in which I had a lot of noise sensitivity and light sensitivity. So I had to be in a dark room with headphones, very little light, dim light, and a little stimulation. But I could tolerate turning on a bird cam and no volume and watching birds. And that really helped me relax, give me comfort in moments that, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of discomfort, there's a lot of grief, that you have to endure. So
yeah, that's amazing.
there's no right way, I think.
There's many
There's
right
no
ways.
right.
And I think that's one of the really cool things about birds, is that you don't have to necessarily go on this epic quest to find them. They often come to you, and having a tree in the backyard, or being able to beam in birds on a webcam. Folks, if you know of any webcams you love watching, share them in the chat so others can tap into them. The Cornell Lab of Ornithology have a lot of webcams. They have ones in West Texas full of hummingbirds. They have ones from Panama with these big fruit feeders and all these birds in Panama coming.
Fun.
Yeah, I mean, what an amazing thing to do. And Letícia and I were talking about how amazing it would be if more healthcare providers and workers in, aged care facilities and rehab hospitals set up webcams for patients, just as a connection to the outdoors and to birds and the world outside of where they're currently being kind of stuck. Thank you. Yeah, what a fantastic way to enjoy birds, even when you're so limited by what your body's letting you do.
Yes. And I think even the use of binoculars for birding, some people have a really hard time with the amount of sensory input that the image of the binoculars, you have to just balance, you have to, focus, and you have to adjust depth. And sometimes that can be a lot for someone dealing with, energy budget or even sensory stimuli. And so we need to, I think, distance ourselves from this idea that you ought to have optics, you ought to have this, all this fancy equipment, to go out and watch birds or listen to them and enjoy them.
Yeah, absolutely. You absolutely don't need to have binoculars to be a birder or to enjoy birds. And that's something I saw, that there are a few folks here leading accessible outings and so on. I saw it in the chat. Not emphasizing the need for binoculars is a really important thing we can do to be a bit more inclusive of folks who bird in different ways, or who can't lift binoculars. They don't have the upper body strength, or they can't deal with looking through binoculars. Birding by ear is a great way to enjoy birds that doesn't involve things that are heavy, hard to manage, maybe too expensive, all these different things.
Yes.
That doesn't make you not a birder. They're just a tool that is helpful for some people.
Yes, exactly.
So if you were birding out, outside somehow, how does fibromyalgia and now also long COVID impact the way that you go birding, and what do you do to try and work around that, like using binoculars or not the binoculars, or taking rest breaks, things like that? What strategies and what tips and tricks do you have for other folks who may have similar chronic illnesses to help you go birding?
Yeah, so I do a lot of birding within a block of my house. Right now, I am currently in a phase that I have decent mobility. I'm able to be a little bit more independent on my own. Some days I do need a cane, for example, and I do not bring in binoculars. It's too much for me. And sometimes with fibro, I have a lot of hand pain, hand tingling, just hands are uncomfortable. I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be doing that at all. So I just let go of that, and I just walk in a very slow pace, very calmly. I let go of being too concerned about taxonomy and ID because of sensory overload and information processing overload. It's a little bit of a meditation. I just try to be there with them and just make that connection. Just what are they doing? What is, oh, look at this, how would I describe the song in the air? Just you be creative in that moment, and use that, for myself, just to recenter myself. So I use it a lot of as a tool for, meditation. Um, and it it really depends on how I bird. It really depends on the symptom that I'm flaring the day. So if mobility is a challenge, I bird from home. I sit in my backyard, and I just watch birds if I can handle a binocular. I i will use them. Sometimes I make videos with my phone because it's nice, it's easier than binoculars. So I just reached the point that, there are no rules for birding for me.
Yes,
So
yes.
whatever way I want to do it, whatever way I can do it in the moment, because it's such a dynamic disability, um, I will do it, and I will try to enjoy that.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Yeah, and I know a lot of folks don't necessarily realize that, there's disability is so diverse, and even within one diagnosis, people are diverse,
Yes,
and then even within one person, your needs and your kind of capacity each day changes, and even within the
yes,
day, you said, and a lot of people don't
yes,
realize this, and they might see, maybe someone sees you out with a cane one day and then without a cane the next day. That doesn't mean that you are faking it or that you're magically healed.
yes,
It's just what
yes.
you're living with.
Or it's a fashion statement, which
There
I
you
have
go.
heard before.
Yeah, you can. I've seen some beautiful canes, like purple and like sparkly canes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. So fun. Do you find, if you, so you said you walk around the block and you go slowly, um, is
I go
having
very
rest
slowly.
breaks important, or like having benches,
Yes.
to sit on,
So
is that
I
important?
know there are three things. First, the slope of the terrain is extremely important to me because of my ankle mobility. Um, it's a strategy to avoid injury because I have injured both my ankles multiple times. So I need to pay attention to that. The second thing is places to sit down in shade. That's very, very, very important. Heat intolerance is a problem, in my case. Um, so because with fibro and long COVID, I have terrible, terrible sleep. I still struggle a lot with sleep. So I manage my sleep, that I try to go to bed very early and I wake up at 3 a.m. usually. So I go birding very early. But at the same time, temperature wise, as it is what my body tolerates, uh, better in the climate that I'm living now. When I was in Canada, I was very intolerant to cold as well. And heat, just the extreme temperature ranges, it's very uncomfortable. So just no birding outside. Let's do
Mm-hmm.
some birding out the window.
Yeah, yeah,
So this
yeah.
this type of decision making process that, I have um, to do. And uh, definitely, it's not something that uh, a birding and outing. It's not something I can do every day. I need to pace myself very well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's twice a week, 3 times a week,
Mm-hmm.
on a good week, that I can do this around the block.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And yeah, you mentioned shade. I know a lot of people with chronic illnesses like multiple sclerosis and lupus, particularly, not just those folks don't necessarily only have difficulty with heat and keeping themselves, their bodies have a hard time with heat regulation, but also
Yeah.
just direct sun makes things really hard. And
Mm-hmm.
so shade is actually an access consideration in outdoor spaces. And if folks, if you're interested in learning more about that, what makes a truly accessible birding location, there is a big web page on the Birdability website called Access Considerations, and there's a lot of detail about things like shade and benches. And trail surfaces, slope. You mentioned all of these things. A lot of different people with a lot of different access needs benefit from this stuff. Benches. Oh my gosh. I'm sure we need to start a hashtag about birding from benches on social media.
Oh, benches is just absolutely such a need.
Yeah. So we sort of touched on this, but someone sent a question in ahead of time, and I thought it was a really great question. We sort of touched on it already, but the question was, have you found a way to enjoy birds on days when your pain or fatigue are so bad that you don't have the energy to walk down a trail? And you mentioned just walking around the block, or birding from your backyard, or birding from your window.
Yes, so the birding from the window really got me thinking, because I was forced. It was migration time when I first got sick, and I was just, oh my God, I'm gonna miss migration. It was so terrible. So I just sat by the window, and I'm like, I'm gonna give this a try and just see how it goes. And my neighbors could see me sitting by the window with binoculars. I'm sure they thought it was extremely strange, but I had the privilege to live in a neighborhood that had lots of mature trees, and that brought in a good amount of diversity, and also I had the privilege to have a backyard who had lots of trees as well. So I think the fact that I was not, in an apartment building complex and in a place, with a lot of concrete, there are access challenges to birding, even if you're trying to bird from home, and I think people need to consider that, like, what can we do for folks who are homebound? Where just so many people are homebound because of chronic illness and disability, even before the pandemic, and now it's a reality for millions of people. So we ought to do better, in terms of health planning of our neighborhoods, to think about these folks that, have this reliance on green spaces that are immediate, that they can't just get a car and go somewhere else.
Yeah, and you and I were talking before about that urban planning, having native trees and plants in the neighborhood, even if someone can't maybe afford or is able to, they can't afford a feeder or bird seed, or they can't physically fill the feeder up themselves. But if there's lots of native plants in the neighborhood, hopefully there'll be a lot of birds passing through and they can enjoy them anyway. And that's something that can be done, on a higher level, but has positive impacts on everybody living there, let alone the birds, who now have some more habitat.
Exactly. Can we please stop raking our leaves?
Right.
Leave your leaves in place.
Leave the leaves. Leave the
birds
leaves.
will benefit from it. Yes. Like simple things like that, There's so much that can be done.
And getting involved, maybe if you live somewhere and there's a local park or a local creek where there's, people are doing revegetation efforts, and, you getting involved in that might be helping your neighbors you don't even know who have chronic illnesses, who are really old, who that can enjoy birds that way, because you're helping create this habitat in the community. So you're an ornithologist. It's your job as well as your hobby. But chronic illness can make things challenging in workplaces. So I know some workplaces are really supportive, and managers and colleagues, and some maybe are not. So what would your ideal workplace look like, supporting you as an employee with 2 chronic illnesses?
Yeah, I think in general, people can benefit a lot from having their employers just give the opportunity for them to be heard and take in what their needs are. Just believe people when they tell you what they need. And I think it's very simple, and people are eager and they're happiest when they can't express their true selves and be their true selves. And being able to say, I am disabled and these are my needs, and have these needs match is something that it's a human right. It's a basic human right. And I think it boils down to something that's just so simple. You know?
Sure. I know things like allowing multiple rest breaks throughout the day, you know, not pushing someone to work 9 till 5 with a 30-minute lunch,
yes.
but letting people, maybe they're working from 8 till 6, but they have a few half-an-hour breaks, things like that.
Exactly.
Just like it's not that difficult, really. That shouldn't be that hard to implement in a workplace, but the workplace being supportive of that kind of need, and
yes.
maybe adequate sick leave, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
if you're just exhausted, there's no point you coming to work. You're going to be even worse for the rest of the week, right? If you push over, you said your activity tolerance, like if you go over that, the outcome is even worse for you.
Absolutely. Yes. And I have I'm evolving. I think my relationship with productivity has been changing a lot. So because of the severity of my chronic illness, and I have been forced to really adapt my life and completely change my life to accommodate what my body can do. And that makes you realize as well how much you put your value into how much you can produce in terms of, you know, work output. And sometimes you start paying attention in how much time you put into tasks that are actually just futile. You know, they add nothing to no one, not even yourself. So I think having my body tell me, you know, you have to stop, you have to slow down, stop, pace, and you have to rest and give your body a chance to heal, showed me that, you know, I am capable of doing many things given the right conditions for me to do these things, you know. But if these conditions are not matched, yes, it will be extremely challenging for me to, you know, be productive in a able-bodied perception of productivity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I imagine that's a like a lot of the things you've talked about. It's one thing to kind of mention, oh, you have to adjust to that. I imagine it's a lot more difficult going through that, and, you know, taking that in and giving yourself that grace to be different, and to have different needs, and to have a different life than what maybe you had before, or what other people might expect from you, and being able to say, no, like I can't do that. I don't have that doesn't fit for me right now, and I have to look after myself first before I do anything else.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And with long COVID, it's very, very, very tricky to adapt, and that is true for myalgic encephalomyelitis, for example, that has the hallmark symptom of a post-exertional malaise, this exacerbation of symptoms if you pass any activity threshold. And this is an illness that, you know, it's been there before the pandemic. It's it hasn't been given the attention that it deserves. And now, you know, we have this mass disabling event of the pandemic, like really just showing people that you need to pay attention to post-infectious illnesses, right? You need to give people what they need to recover when they get sick. You can't really push people into complete crash. And we need to be also harnessing the power of nature and birds, and just reconnect with the environment to really heal ourselves. I think that's very important, to be intentional in doing that.
Yeah, and because I know there's a few folks in the chat who leading outings and stuff, organize bird-related programs like Big Sits, where you're not moving down a trail, where people can come just for an hour and then go home and you're sitting still, or including some programming around mindful birding. We have a page on the Birdability website about mindful birding. There's resources up there. There's lots more coming out about that, using birds as meditation and a self-care strategy. There's as well as, there's nothing wrong with listing, but that might not be the way you want to enjoy birds, chasing and cruising around at high speeds. So now you mentioned having you said mass disabling events. So we know that language is really important, and it can include or it can alienate people if someone uses the wrong word. And language is always evolving and things are changing. I know historically handicapped was a word that's often used, and these days I know many people in the disability community find it outdated and offensive even. Some people, though, are really worried about calling someone disabled in case that's offensive. And so do you identify as being disabled, and do you think that word is kind of offensive, or is there another word you would rather use, or what's your feeling about the word disabled and disability?
Yeah, I 100% identify as being disabled. I think it's a very necessary conversation to have on what it means to be disabled, because we are the most diverse minority group, so there is no right or wrong way of being disabled. There's no stereotype of being disabled, but there is a common thread that there are things that limit us. And have needs, and so we need to communicate these needs and be given the opportunity to communicate these needs and have these needs matched, right? And before long COVID, I was disabled. However, I had so much internalized ableism, even though I accumulated diagnoses like throughout the years: IBS, fear, depression, anxiety, and fibromyalgia, and had all of these difficulties and had to make lots of access considerations. But I did not see myself. I thought disability was something that just meant some sort of, that I was failing in the system, that is not built for disabled people. So when I first got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, I struggled a lot to tell people that I simply suffered for nearly a year, and people just assumed that I was busy working. I was bedbound and I was homebound then. And then I slowly moved out of that crash. But that's still, I had a lot of stigma in my head of that situation. It is a highly stigmatized illness, and I was afraid of telling people that I had fiber. What will they think? Will they think that maybe I'm taking it, because having an invisible illness is complex. It's a complex experience. People have a really hard time handling human vulnerability that they cannot see. Yeah, I'm sorry, I got lost. I started
no.
Many things.
So yeah. Identifying as, it sounds like the kind of summary of what you're saying is that
identify as disabled. Yes, exactly. But when I developed long COVID, then having a multi-system chronic illness that severely affected, several aspects of my life, my entire life, basically. Forced me to educate myself a lot about ableism and internalized ableism, and it faces these values that I had for such a long time. It just shielded myself from it, and that really set me free. To be able to tell people it's not everything that I can eat. Gluten really makes me extremely ill, and that's a thing. And I sometimes I can't think straight, and I will exit the conversation, and that's okay. And I feel comfortable saying these things, but before I didn't. And I am very proud that I can say, like, I am disabled. These are the things that I can do. These are the things that I cannot do. And this is what I need in order to feel comfortable and achieve my well-being.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So changing tact a little bit, we've got a couple more questions and then we'll jump into the Q&A. But bird conservation, looking after birds and their habitats, will succeed when we have everybody on board doing this work and part of this work. What does conservation mean to you? And are there any barriers that impact your participation in bird conservation initiatives?
Yeah, so conservation to me means, I think, reconciliation in the sense of we need to reconcile and reconnect with nature. I think the perception that natural environments and nature need to be devoid from human influence is a very flawed one, because in the moment that we assume that and that we aim for nature and natural spaces that are devoid of human influence, we're saying that we're raising indigenous peoples, right? And we're raising a very rich and strong history of living in an environment in contact with nature, understanding nature, and having that relationship in which you are part of the environment. We are part of nature. We need to learn how to contain ourselves. So I think my point of view of conservation is taking into account intersectionality and taking into account, all of the systemic barriers that keep people disconnected from nature and keep people, disconnected from, I will support a politician and I will support policy making that benefits, people, nature, health, education, because birds don't live in a bubble. There's not this vacuum and then birds. So we really need to work with people and be better with people and love people and meet them where they are. And I am well aware that that's not the concept of conservation that has been applied in many places, but I do believe that that is the way forward for us. We need to do different. What we are doing is not working. I don't have all the answers, thankfully. I don't want the responsibility either.
Okay. By the way, if anyone here, we know folks here with fibromyalgia or other chronic illnesses, there is going to be this little survey at the end of this webinar. We really hope you fill it out because we're asking you there for your tips and tricks about birding with chronic illnesses, so that we at Birdability can create a really great resource on our webpage for more people to learn about birding with chronic illnesses and things that might work for them if they're new to birding or if they're new to their chronic illness. So please keep sharing them in the chat or fill them in at the little survey at the end of this webinar, and I'll be collecting those answers and Leticia's experiences as well. Hey, Letícia, one more thing before we go into the Q&A. A lot of folks with disabilities and other health concerns get asked some really inappropriate and invasive questions, or people say some really not okay stuff. And sometimes they're just genuinely curious, but these questions are just often, they're invasive, and it's not the right time. Meeting someone out birding is definitely not the right place to ask them for the first time questions that are inappropriate. And so just to let you all know, folks, I spoke to Letícia about these ahead of time, and she gave me permission to ask them or mention these things. But these are red flagged. So here's my red flag. I will wave it so that you get a visual prompt that this is not okay to say to someone with a chronic illness, or someone who you don't even know if they have a chronic illness, because often you can't see it. So here's the first one. Letícia, you said fibromyalgia causes chronic pain. How do you live like that? I couldn't. Rough. What's that supposed to mean?
Terrible. Oh, I got so sad.
Yeah. Oh. All right. I can't believe that sometimes you're so smart and sometimes you say you just can't think straight. You don't even look sick. Are you just pretending to get out of work?
Yeah, we get a lot. And with long COVID being somewhat novel illness, in people, just a lot of people still don't know much about it. There is a lot of misinformation out there. So, and that is true for many chronic illnesses, that the toll is on the patient to explain, hey, yeah, this is the front of the package, but there is a lot going on inside.
Yeah, and you said before, just believing people when they tell you what they need. Like, don't question it, just believe, right?
Yeah, it's just simple.
And then you have two chronic illnesses. Chronic meaning they're not going anywhere, right? So, well, get well soon. It's meant well, but
I hope you're feeling better.
Not great, huh? What should someone say instead? They're trying
really
to be kind.
not great. The number. I think people can tell you, ask you, how are you? Or even if you're chronically ill, I mean, you can tell people, oh, you look very good today. But that's okay. Is it a good symptom day for you? How are your symptoms today? I think making the assumption, I think it feels a lot like I am projecting a reality, and I hope you get better. No, I'm not getting better. It's been over 600 days, and there is a lot that it seems like it's not going away. So let me maybe talk about it if I want it, or let's not talk about it. You don't need to say, I hope you are feeling better. You just don't.
Yeah. It's definitely coming from a kind place, but it doesn't necessarily feel good to receive it, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm about to jump into the Q&A session. The Q&A, the questions that have come in. So folks, if you do have questions, please stick them in the Q&A box, because that makes it a lot easier for me to find the questions in amongst all the awesomeness coming in through the chat. Thank you, Letícia, for sharing all of this and all your experiences. And I have seen, it's hard for me to keep track of the chat, but I've seen a few things pop up where people have been really grateful for you sharing your attitude and your approach to dealing with some really tough stuff. So it sounds like you may have inspired a few folks today with just the way that you are.
Thank you.
Before I go into those questions, is there anything else that you would like to share with folks? I know that you and I spoke a little bit about dogs earlier.
Right. Yeah, controversial topic. Let's spark some. Yeah, I think when we talk about accessibility in general, and Freya and I were discussing the issue with dogs earlier, and I explained that a little better. But my point is that being chronically ill and disabled is extremely expensive. My God. And your income is also reduced because of the amount of work that you can do. So that takes a lot of, adapting your life in so many ways. And adaptive equipment of any kind, and I don't want to call a dog an adaptive equipment, but sometimes, it's sort of, they do offer a lot of services, and getting an ADA certified animal, for example, fully trained is extremely expensive. Not everyone can afford. There is certainly an issue with misuse of emotional support animals, but some people do need service dogs for all sorts of different functions, and some people with invisible illnesses and invisible disabilities that need support animals and need service animals that might bring these animals for bird outings, the answer, if we reach the point that it gets complicated, because first, the person with the animal might be frowned upon, which is why are you in this habitat, harsh, where I'm not talking about an extremely sensitive endangered species nesting site, but I'm talking about, just birding in a natural habitat. And you have a service animal that isn't necessarily an official service animal, because there is an access challenge to getting an accredited service animal. So it's a problem with multiple layers of accessibility. You have financial accessibility to, adaptive devices, and even things that include increase the access and facilitate people's lives, like service dogs. And there are these barriers, these things gatekeeping people from accessing these things in public spaces. So I think it would be very nice to have a discussion on how to accommodate as a community people that do need to have support animals with them. How can we accommodate that as a community, and how we can educate people on, service animals, support animals, and including the handlers.
Yeah, really interesting point.
And their decisions are like dependent, right?
Sorry, I think my maybe my internet or got a little funky there, but no, thank you for sharing that about service animals and emotional support animals, and not being able to necessarily access the certification, but dogs can be an access need for folks. And
right.
maybe when you if you're organizing bird outings, just saying, well-behaved dogs are welcome, like that could be a way to signal to folks, if you have a service animal, that if they're not well behaved, okay, that's a different issue, but if they are, then they can come, because we know that some people need these to be able to participate. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yes.
I just saw a message, Letcia, I think maybe your internet is having a hard time, so if you wanted to turn off your video, if that might make it helpful. I know it's kind of coming on and off a little bit. Okay, so now we've got Leticia's beautiful photo instead. But you're still here. So, hey, so I've got some questions from the Q&A. Thank you, everyone, for sending these in.
Okay.
Let's see. So someone said...
Is it better now? Because, I'm sorry, Frey, I changed to I'm out of Wi-Fi, so it should be better.
Okay.
So I can keep video. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's lovely to see your face. So here's a question. Letícia, I'm sorry that you now experience long COVID along with fibromyalgia. Did you experience light sensitivity before you had long COVID? I'm now light sensitive since I've been diagnosed with chronic dizziness. I can't tolerate shadows and shade, like at the same time, where there's a high contrast between the shadows and the shade, but I enjoy just talking to the birds that I see.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. I did not have light sensitivity before long COVID, but I do experience episodes in which I am, in general, sensory sensitive. So it comes the full package usually when it comes, and it's light and sound. So I do have sound. I wear earplugs and sound consuming headphones and an eye mask, and just eliminate every single sensory input. Sometimes, like, even touch. I had a terrible flare between November and April, and I couldn't bear being touched because it caused pain. Sensory input, it takes energy to process, and it causes pain sometimes. Yeah.
Someone, and one of our volunteers, one of our Birdability captains, wrote a really great piece on the Birdability blog. She's autistic, and she goes birding with noise cancelling headphones a lot because the sound of many birds, she said cardinals and wrens are the worst because they're so loud and so constant, but it's just too much, and wearing noise cancelling headphones allows her to go and enjoy the birds. So if anyone's interested in that, go check that out, because it was really interesting to read about. Yeah, and I know
just one thing, my husband is autistic, and I learn a lot from him, and he questions a lot of my internalized ableism as well, because he goes birding with me because I need to have a companion, and the sensory input of looking for binoculars for him is oftentimes unbearable. So he cannot enjoy birds through lens at all. It just doesn't work for him. And he enjoys that experience in a completely different manner. And sometimes I catch myself trying to impose my way of birding into him, and he's like, just no. Let me do my thing. And I'm like, oh yes, I'm doing that thing that I'm not supposed to do. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Even when you know someone so well and you go birding with them a lot, you're still sort of doing that without even meaning to. So that means that folks who maybe aren't used to that need to really be thinking about what assumptions we make about how others want to enjoy birds and be out in nature.
Exactly.
Yes. A lot of people who have light sensitivity, my background as an occupational therapist is in blindness and low vision services, and a lot of low vision conditions create a lot of glare sensitivity. So people wearing caps inside so the light isn't shining right into their eyes, or sunglasses, things like that can really help, or just taking time between changing from an outdoors, like out in a bright car park, into a shopping center that's just going to be darker, and just giving yourself a minute or two to kind of let your eyes and your brain get used to that. I know they're strategies that people can sometimes find helpful. Let's see. How do you deal with the mental or the emotional aspect of having lost some of your previous life as you once knew it? Do you get frustrated by what you can no longer do, or have you kind of come to terms with what your life looks like now?
That's an excellent question. It's been a process, to be honest. I think, life grows as such as graph of life growing around grief. And I think grief stays the same, it's just the same size. And I grieve a lot my previous life. I grieve a lot of, loss of independence, loss of spontaneity. I can no longer be spontaneous. It's something that it's not part of my world anymore. And when you think about all of the moments, that come to your life because let's just get out of the house and do this cool thing. No, I can't. I need to think of my energy budget and whether or not that will have health consequences to me. So there is a lot to think through and process.
Uh-oh, internet troubles again.
To everything in your life. You need to rethink your routine. You need to rethink your job. You need to rethink how much stress you take in, how much information, everything. So it's a lot of change. It takes a lot of time, and I'm trying to give myself a lot of grace in this process, especially with symptom management and management, how much I can do within a day. And if I overdo, there is a lot of frustration behind it. And sometimes, there is just a crash for no reason, no particular reason. I just have to learn to let go of having control of some things. And that's a massive shift in mindset, how I live my life. So it's been a process, and definitely a process. And I'm trying to bring back, adapt things that were my passions before. I'm letting go of some that are completely inaccessible to me right now, and trying to build new ones.
Yeah. Wow, it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
Definitely. But as someone, I saw a few people had said in the chat, and I noticed the same thing. You it looks like from the outside that you give yourself a lot of grace, and that's got to be a really important thing. It looks like you're not beating yourself up too much about this, which is a good thing. Just
I think
what it is.
I do, but I have to be honest that I deal with a lot of anger. I have a lot of anger. I have anger because I got sick, because my partner was an essential worker. And when the pandemic, we were first waivers, and we have to fight every single step of the way to have our illness recognized. We have to be the ones that basically manage our own care. And there's so much that goes into planning our lives to enable us to have our basic needs matched, that it's just, it enrages you, the lack of social systemic, support, that there is no policy in place at this point in the game to support people with post-infectious illnesses. It's a major failure of our society in general, I think.
Yeah. Looking forward to seeing that improve for sure. Hey, one last question from the audience. So if someone's leading an outing or a big sit or some kind of bird-related program, what is the best way for them to ask about what is needed or wanted by the participants in order to help them participate? What would you want an outing leader to ask the group, or to ask you, so that you can let them know what you need?
I think there are some basic things that you can do upfront, I think, to remove the burden of having to explain all access needs, right? So for example, if your outing, where is your outing? Describe your outing. Can you foresee access challenges, and can you be upfront about it? And can you be upfront about how you're going to support people in that way? And leave a channel so that people can let you know what their needs are in case their needs are not met by, the homework that you have done, given the circumstances of the event that you're planning. The other thing that I believe people really need to put more thought into is into financial access. How much does it cost to get there? How much does it cost to be there? Do you have to be off work to be there? All those things. So who's gonna, are you someone's caretaker? All those things, have to be taken into consideration, and financial access is a taboo to be discussed in this thing. It's the very last discussing. It keeps a lot of people out. Will people be able to eat? Do they have proper clothes to dress for the environment? All those things. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And when nature centres and bird clubs and whoever can help remove those financial barriers to access, for sure, it helps more people participate. Providing childcare or stating ahead of time that kids are allowed on this bird outing, so you can bring your kids if you're looking out for them, or that kind of stuff. Like it may be the difference between someone being able to attend or not. Thank you for all that. I know that the way I do it when I'm leading accessible outings is I say ahead of time in the outing description, if you have any accommodation needs, please, here's my email address, please let me know ahead of time. And then at the start of the outing, I say, if anyone has any needs any help or has any access needs that they would like us to all be aware of, if it will help you, please, feel free to share them with the group after you share your name and pronouns and that. Or if I'm meeting someone one-on-one, I just say, hey, you're not required to be an expert on every single disability. Like, that wouldn't be fair unless that was your job. But most bird outing leaders aren't going to be. That's not the idea. But if you say something like, hey, what do you need from me to help you participate the way you would like? Let people tell you. Trust them when they tell you what they need, and they're the experts on themselves. So ask them, and they'll tell you if they need something. You don't have to have all the bases covered in every scenario. Like, just be guided by the people that you're trying to serve. I know that's a word you used previously in another conversation we had. You're trying to serve these folks, right? And when you have that mindset, it might change the way that you kind of approach it as an outing leader or interpreter or a program provider. Wow. Thank you so much, Letcia. This has been such a valuable and enlightening conversation. It's hard for me to keep track of the chat, but I've seen more comments pop in thanking you for sharing your vulnerability, as well as your approaches and your tips and tricks. And
thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And folks, if you missed some of this, or if you know someone else who would benefit from this, the recording will be up on the American Bird Conservancy and the Birdability YouTube two channels, probably by the end of this week. And we've got a couple more in this series. So the next episode will be the first Tuesday of January. Same time, same place. You have to register for it separately though. And I'll be speaking with Carrie Porters, who is an autistic birder and a member of the LGBTQIA+ community. And Carrie has a lot to share and has taught me a lot about folks in the autism community and neurodivergence, and how to be more empowering and welcoming. So that will be another really awesome thing to tune into. Once again, I'm just going to stick the link in the chat. If you, as a nonprofit, again, Birdability really appreciates any donation, big or small. So if you'd like to help us continue to share the joys of birding with people who have disabilities or other health concerns, there's a donation link. Really genuinely appreciate any donation that you can make. And these Birdability t-shirts, I can't really show you the back properly, but it's got a good thing on the back. There's a good photo of it. They're on sale until Friday. So if you want to get hold of a short sleeve t-shirt or a long sleeve t-shirt or a hoodie, those funds the proceeds go directly to Birdability to support our work in this. So thanks. Thank you again, Letícia. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, American Bird Conservancy. I look forward to learning more from you, Letícia, and I wish you all the best as you
thank
keep working through.
Thank you,
Letícia, thank you from us as well. I've been reading through the chat as you were talking, and one of the things that kept coming up is with fibromyalgia in particular, a lot of the people in the chat were saying that it's such a new diagnosis for a lot of healthcare providers. It just doesn't get the recognition that a lot of other health concerns do, and it's difficult. I know from just reading about it some that it's difficult for a lot of healthcare providers to diagnose. And so there was a lot of gratitude in the chat for just speaking about that particular illness and how you cope with it.
Thank you. And please connect. I'm on Instagram, Twitter.
Oh, what's your Instagram handle so folks can connect with you?
Oh, it's that Letícia Soares. It's just how serious as my name, apparently. It's like dinosaur, Letícia Soares. I can send it to you.
There we go.
Yes,
Perfect.
I just followed you, Letícia, on Twitter. Thank you so much, everyone, and thanks
again, Letícia.
Interpreters, Paula and Kathy as well, and to Erica. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.